Well, hello and welcome. We're going to spend the next few minutes talking about Financial Wellness 101. I think that you'll really enjoy this brief presentation and hopefully take a lot away from it. Let's give you a little bit of background on who we are first, and then we'll get into the meat of the matter. Our organization is called, as our website is, 700credit.org. We're a nonprofit organization focused on financial literacy, education, and awareness. We really specialize in helping families with improving credit, saving money, that holistic approach, and we'll get more into that here in a few minutes. Our background actually goes all the way back to 1996. A group of us were benefits consultants with a large company called Deloitte & Touche, now just called Deloitte, and we worked with large self-insured employers in helping them manage the risks of their employees. And so we were focused on what can we do to keep them from having medical claims in terms of managing their cardiovascular health and managing weight and so on. But what we found is so often individuals had financial stressors that needed to be addressed first. Otherwise, they seemed to be unable or unwilling to focus on many of their physical health and well-being issues. So the initiative grew and evolved and morphed. Before we actually became a nonprofit, we were part of a for-profit entity, and we literally had a contract with the NFL Players Association. So many parts of this program are something similar to, we actually worked with NFL players across the country. Now through our program we have a number of resources that are available. One of our most important one is the Financial Wellness 101 program. It's free for the participants, so there's no cost barrier, and they do have to qualify to participate, but it's a free program that helps them with this entire spectrum of improving credit, saving money, and so forth. When we look at what all is involved with financial wellness, sometimes we like to use the term a smart money plan. That's what we think that everyone should have, and we can help them create. It addresses a variety of components. Certainly having optimal credit will save you money and give you more options, right? Because if we have bad credit, it may preclude us from getting certain jobs. It can make buying a car much more expensive. It can keep us from being able to even get a mortgage to own our own home. So certainly optimizing credit is one important part, but not the only part of a smart money plan. Also having proper protection, having positive cash flow in our home, creating and maintaining an emergency fund in case of unexpected expenses, accumulating assets, not necessarily to become the next Warren Buffett, but to be able to have reserves for retirement and sending our kids to college, whatever those future expenditures may be. And then having access to resources, help, someone that we can talk to get direction and advice as we navigate through this path. So that in total is what we call a smart money plan, and that's what we help individuals create with absolutely no cost, no requirement to buy anything, through the Financial Wellness 101 program. So let's go ahead and dig into the subject matter. We have really three learning objectives, and the first we just covered, getting familiar with financial wellness kind of at on a larger scale. We're going to dig into Credit 101. We're going to learn how we can legally improve our credit scores, understand some of the key factors that impact our credit, and how to avoid some top credit mistakes. Then we're going to get into money, and it's often that most people say, I don't really need to learn about money, I just need more money. But most of us haven't been taught some of the key concepts and principles that will allow us to save money more effectively and grow it more significantly. And we'll also learn about how to avoid some top money mistakes. And then certainly we'll encourage everyone to complete the Financial Wellness 101 evaluation. So from that, you'll have your financial wellness score somewhere between a positive 10 and a negative 10. Understand where you're at, and from that, we can help create a smart money plan for you for free. Well, is there a need for financial wellness? We certainly feel like it, and these statistics probably would support it. The current statistics show that 83% of Americans are not saving adequately for retirement. And in fact, a lot of people aren't even thinking about retirement because they're just trying to keep the ship afloat right now, just paying their bills in the short term. But certainly, if we all live to the retirement age, which we should with today's medical advances, then we need to be thinking about those long-term savings. We understand that 76% of Americans are living check to check. Over 6 out of 10 report having one or more serious financial problems each year. Over half of Americans face one or more legal issues annually. This number may be a little bit low, but at least 1 out of 3 Americans have poor or challenged credit. And again, most people just really haven't been educated objectively on how to navigate these waters, and that's what we hope to start the process of doing with you here today. So the impact is more than just dollar signs in your pocket. It's more than just a 3-digit credit score. In fact, there's been more than 200 studies and surveys that have tracked, measured, and documented the link between financial stress and illness. And in fact, the APA, the American Psychological Association, now recognizes financial stress not only as a significant cause, but the leading cause of unhealthy behaviors, including smoking, weight gain, etc. And then at the workplace, these can contribute towards lost productivity and increased absenteeism. So I think we'd all agree there is certainly a validation for the need for help with financial wellness. Anyone recognize who this gentleman is? It's Abraham Maslow, and he taught us about the hierarchy of needs. You might have learned about this in psychology in high school or in college. And in brief, what it means is that if we are struggling with more basic needs, it's very difficult for us to focus on longer term and able to reach our potential. The most dramatic example of that would be if we had no air to breathe or no water to drink, nothing else really matters, right? Well, of course, most of us don't have that level of needs, but in terms of having financial security, not being stressed about paying our bills, being able to be prepared for life's expected and unexpected events is a good thing. It kind of takes the weight off of our shoulders and allows us to enjoy life more and reach our potential. So much of our program is built around these proven psychological concepts of behavioral change. No different than if you went and joined a health club and said, I want to get healthier. They might have a personal trainer work with you to develop a plan and support you in that. Now, the personal trainer wouldn't hop up on the treadmill and run for you, right? But they would, in fact, help you accomplish your goals, and that's a very good analogy of how our programs are set up. So there's 3 core components of financial wellness: credit, money, and legal. We're going to focus today on the credit and money sides, but you can see how they certainly can overlap in many ways. So let's drill into credit, because credit's usually the fly in most people's face that really gets their attention. I'm tired of having bad credit. It's keeping me from doing what I want to do. So let's drill into some very practical information on what we can do about our credit. Well, first it's important to understand how our credit score is derived. The most significant portion comes from our payment history, 35%. Well, that makes sense, right? Because who knows what the future holds? Who knows if you'll pay or if I'll pay my bills tomorrow and in the future? But in the absence of a crystal ball, the best we have is to understand, well, what have we done in the past? Because that's probably a good predictor of what will happen in the future. And more importantly, what's happened in the recent past is the most accurate predictor of what we'll do in the future. An example of this is if I borrowed $10 from you for lunch today, but I also had borrowed $10 2 weeks ago and didn't pay you back, your willingness to loan me $10 today would be greatly impacted by that slow pay that I've had. I haven't repaid you from 2 weeks ago. However, if it had been 2 years ago that I borrowed $10 last and didn't pay you back, that matters a little less, right? Some more water has ran under the bridge. Time has gone by. And that's true for payment history. So what we've done most recently will impact our score more than what happened a long time ago. But overall, payment history is the best predictor of what we'll do in the future according to the credit scoring algorithms. The second is our revolving balances. So there's installment and revolving. Installment's like a home loan or a car loan or many bank loans. Revolving is where you can keep accessing the money. You can use it or not use it, and you only have to pay back the portion that you are using. And so 30% of our credit score is based upon how we're managing that. And we're going to come back and talk about strategies for each of these in a moment, but let's continue on. Our length of credit history is 15%, and so that is the longer that we've had established credit, the more that it helps us because it shows stability, right? Types of credit, again, having a good, healthy credit mix, and then lastly, recent inquiries, because if we're applying for a bunch of credit, that sets off some triggers that maybe something's going on, that we're going down with the ship, or we certainly might be taking on more debt than we can afford. So this is objectively the credit scoring values. Now let's interpret it a little bit, because what you should feel very empowered by is that credit scores, credit reports have no memory. They only reflect as of today, what's going on today. So if we make changes and fix things today, tomorrow's a new day. Your score could go up 50 or 100 or more points tomorrow based upon the action we take today. Well, you might say, well, I don't really see what I can do about this. This seems to be kind of locked in the past. Well, that's not true. For payment history, there are legal means, and we'll talk about some of those, that we can go through and, frankly, clean up how our payment history has appeared. It's legal, it's ethical, it's practical, it's enabled by federal laws, which we'll talk about in a moment. So there's a lot we can do to clean up our payment history, and we just talked about that's the biggest driver of our credit score. Secondly, our revolving balances. Certainly we can pay down balances, and that would materially help us improve our credit based upon 30% of the weighting. Length of credit history, a little tougher. You know, if we had that Kmart card or that Sears card that we haven't used in 6 years and we decide to cut it up, you know, that may be shortening our credit history, and we may not be able to reestablish that. Although there are some strategies that we can help people with whereby we tap into existing credit lines to kind of plug into a longer credit history. Types of credit, 10%, there's a remarkable amount of impact that we can have on that, and we've seen that average significant credit point increases in the first 30 days, because the experts say that we really should have 3 to 5 revolving accounts that are reporting positively to the credit bureaus. Most people with challenged credit don't. Maybe they have some real itty-bitty cards that don't help as much, or they don't have hardly any credit lines reporting positively. So it's not just taking away the negative that we need to focus on. We actually need to focus also on adding new positive, and we're really good at helping individuals with that. And again, through the Financial Wellness 101 program, all these strategies we're going to be able to help you with for free, so don't worry about it costing. We are an alternative to fee-based credit repair. Our program is free. And then in terms of inquiries, you know, we can make conscious decisions not to apply for a whole bunch of credit lines and get more inquiries, but we also can, again, leverage key laws to go back and remove some of those past inquiries. So the point of this slide, and we spent quite a bit of time on it, is most of these things are under our control. Frankly, not only going forward, but legally, ethically, and accurately addressing those issues in the past to be able to increase our scores. So there's a lot we can do. When we talk about derogatory items, really we need to think about 3 different categories, and what we do with each category is different. There are errors, and even people with good credit, 79% of credit reports have 1 or more errors. Now those may be small and not that impacting, or they could be big and devastating, but errors aren't identity theft, which we'll get to. They're not mistakes that you made, they're errors. So we need to be looking at our credit reports, even if we have good credit, to see if there are any errors. Identity theft is a big deal that impacts a lot of individuals, and it can be devastating. I will tell you, though, that if you've been a victim or think that you might have been a victim of identity theft, that really opens some doors for some different legal and ethical and effective strategies to improve your credit that much more quickly. So identity theft is bad, but it can be good, ironically, for improving credit. And then, of course, the meat of the matter is self-cause, those issues that life happened and they were under our control to some extent. There are some general rules of credit, and some of these may seem painfully obvious, but let's just go ahead and go through them quickly. We need to pay our bills on time, and for our credit cards or revolving accounts, pay at least the minimum monthly payment on time. If our credit cards are charged up above 20 or 30% utilization, we need to get those down because that can lower our scores. The more utilization we have, the more that drags our scores down. We talked about the Sears or Kmart example a few minutes ago. We don't want to close old revolving accounts, even if we don't actively use them, because that can typically hurt our score. As our conductor says, we need to be really aggressive, and I know this is counterintuitive maybe, but to get a higher credit score, we need to have more positive credit to show that we're responsible, that we have those trade lines, and that we're taking care of those. And that's something that we're going to help you with right away, because we can see often can see a significant boost in credit in just the first month by leveraging that strategy. This is a tough one to address. When you have old debt that's charged off or in collections, in many cases paying it will lower your credit score. And the example I like to give here is my Linda example. I was giving a workshop at a bank, and Linda was one of the folks in the audience. She's a nurse, and she had a real high credit score, over 800, but her elderly mother became ill, so she quit work to take care of her mother, lived off savings for a while, but her mother continued on, and then she lived off of credit for a while and then just ran out of money, so everything collapsed. Well, her mother passed, and then Linda returned to work, and she was just committed to getting her credit score back up. So she started working an extra shift at a second hospital as a nurse and was paying off that old debt. She went to go apply for a car loan. I think her car was wrecked or stolen, I don't remember, but it was time to get a new car. She had no choice. And she couldn't get approved, even though she had gone through all that effort to pay off that old debt. What had happened actually is it reset the date of last activity, called DLA, and her credit score went down. She actually would have had a higher credit score if she wouldn't have paid off those old debts. Isn't that crazy? So we want to be careful about that, and we can kind of walk you through that process. We definitely need a good, healthy mix of credit, which we've discussed. And then anything that's negative on your credit report, again, we can leverage federal laws to be able to contest them, and in many cases have those items removed. And you don't have to hire a credit repair company to do that. We're able to educate and coach through our programming, and if there's something that kind of sticks that doesn't respond to the normal process, we have a group of attorneys that will help, and they don't charge anything up front and simply charge for whatever has been taken off with a predetermined fee schedule. So a great program that is available at no cost to be able to help you improve your credit and improve your life. Now, we've made reference a couple times, and we don't want to spend a lot of time on this brief webinar about this, but we've made reference that there are laws that make all this legal, right? So we need to defend that a little bit so you don't look at it with an eye of skepticism. So there's the Fair Credit Report Act, the Fair and Accurate Transaction Act. We're going to spend more time on the next one. The Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, FDCPA. This is a remarkably important law that many credit repair companies that are effective, and not all of them are, leverage, and we'll get into this. It allows us to validate debt, not dispute it, not to say, oh, it's not mine, but to hold the reporting entity accountable for what they're submitting. And there are actually a number of key elements that they have to be able to meet where they can't report negatively. So we'll talk more about that in just a moment. The Fair Credit Billing Act, and then HIPAA. You might say, well, what in the world does HIPAA have to do all this? Well, the number one cause of bankruptcy are medical bills. And medical bills can, of course, become collection accounts. But because of HIPAA, the privacy law, simply put, they're not able to usually validate the debt once the debt has moved from the original party, the doctor or the hospital, off to the collection company. So HIPAA actually gives us the ability to better leverage the FDCPA to remove medical debt off the credit report. Well, we might say, well, what is the cost of bad credit? I know that it may keep me from getting a job or promotion. I know that it may make it more expensive or even impossible to buy a car or buy a house, but let's try to put some dollars around it. So let's say that we're going to go out and get a $30,000 car. If we've got great credit, we're going to pay approximately $523 a month. So that's our baseline. If we've got good credit, we're going to pay about $538, which is going to pump that up to about an extra $1,000 over the expected loan of that car. So having less than optimal credit, just even having good credit, in the high 600s, for example, still cost us an extra $1,000. Now, if we've got just okay credit, now we're paying the difference between $579 and $523, so we're paying about $56 extra a month. Oh my goodness, now we're up to over $3,400 of extra money paid. Now understand, we got the same car in both scenarios. We didn't get nicer wheels, a bigger engine, we didn't get leather or sunroof. We just paid more. We wasted money, right? And so we need to start thinking about, well, what could we have been doing with that $3,400 instead of just wasting it? Poor credit, now we're maybe paying more than $700 a month, and that drives up the cost to $11,000 more. Oh my goodness, we could have paid down debt, we could have saved, we could have invested, we could have taken a really nice family trip. There's many things that we could have done with $11,000 that would be more valuable to us than just paying it to the finance company. And of course, if we're in really bad shape, we just can't even get a loan at all, or we're stuck with like a payday loan, which could be crazy high interest that often doesn't even report, not payday, I'm sorry, buy here, pay here, that doesn't even report to the bureaus. So it doesn't even reward you for good payment history. What's the point here? Two things. Well, we wanted to quantify that, for example, for a typical car purchase, it's going to cost you about $11,000 extra. So it would make sense to do what you can to get your credit better, because the second point is, even if we're just moving one tier to the next, moving on up the ladder, we're saving money and better off. So no matter where we are in this continuum, we can help you move step by step by step and improve your financial wellness position, improve your credit, and help you save money. That's a big deal. So when it comes to credit report repair, there's three key words I'd like you to remember: complete, accurate, and verifiable. Those are three magic words for legal and effective credit repair. And we can contest, we meaning as a society, as citizens, we can contest anything that's on our credit report, even if it's ours. We don't have to lie, cheat, or steal to have the item removed. These laws allow for us to do that. Now, credit report repair isn't instant, but it certainly can show positive movement in as soon as 30 to 90 days. And if we are working on building positive credit as well as removing negative, we can see results in a week or two. So it's really, really effective, and it's well worth it. Debt validation, which we talked about a moment ago, the FDCPA, is crucial because there are 8 key elements that the creditors must prove. And what we found, we see here in red bold, is that 19 out of 20 times they can't validate the debt. Only 1 out of 20 on average can they. So it's a very, very effective strategy when used correctly. So that covers Credit 101, maybe has caused more questions, which we can discuss together, but also by us looking at your credit report and developing a plan, it will make it much more personal and specific to you. So let's transition to the next topic, Money 101. Now don't tune out, don't give up on me yet. We'll move quickly through the second segment because, again, usually credit's the fly in people's face that they want to pay attention to. But usually credit's not the problem. Usually credit's the symptom. Usually money's the problem. So be patient with us here. Give us a couple minutes and let's go through the other side of the coin, which I think can impact you equally or even more so. There are 5 key strategies for saving money, and we've gone around and educated at banks, at universities, at large employers, at small, at churches, apartment complexes, and these are topics that most people haven't been taught, so I don't think it'll be a waste of your time at all. We're going to overview them here and then dig into each one in a moment. So 5 key strategies. We need to outpace inflation. We need to seek protection against market losses. We want to try to avoid, legally of course, taxation, maintain liquidity, and then protect our savings from creditors, lawsuits, and bankruptcy. So that's the cheat sheet. Now let's drill into each one of those. Well, outpacing inflation, that's interesting because most of our parents probably taught us, well, if you have some money to save, go down to the bank, right, and put it into a savings account. Usually checking accounts don't accrue interest, but maybe yours does a little bit. And if you're really living high on the hog, then go open a CD, a certificate of deposit, and that'll even increase your return even more. But if you look at what your bank or banks in your community are actually paying on checking accounts or saving accounts or CDs, it's pretty abysmal, and rarely does it outpace inflation. So even at the time that we're recording this in July of 2014, inflation's pretty low, but you'd be hard-pressed to find a bank that's going to pay you more than what things are getting more expensive, kind of the definition of inflation. So going to a bank and saving money usually is not the best strategy. Now, there's a concept that was developed by Albert Einstein called the Rule of 72, and it has to do with how money grows and how long it takes to double. So again, stick with me for a moment, and this will make a lot of sense. So let's say that we go down to the bank. We have $10,000, and let's just use this as a baseline. We're age 29. Doesn't matter how old you are, but just follow the example, if you will. We have $10,000. We're going to put it in a savings account. We earn 1%. Well, according to Einstein's Rule of 72, we divide this into 72, and it tells us how long it's going to take for our money to double, thus 72 years. So when we're 101, we'll be up to $20,000. Now, this is ignoring inflation, just talking about raw growth based upon the interest rate we're receiving. Well, there's a number of things wrong with this. Waiting to 101 to get money is not going to probably make it, because we're going to need to retire probably before then, and then of course 20,000 is not much for having it invested for 72 years. So now let's move over to the next column, and let's say that we're getting 6%. Well, again, 6 goes into 72 12 times. So every 12 years it doubles, and so by the time we're 65, we have 80,000. Well, 80,000 is a whole lot more than 20,000, right? Now let's go over to age 8%. Now it's doubling every 9 years, so by age 65 we're up to 160,000. Well, I know you could say, well, Tom, of course, 8% is a bigger number, so it's going to grow more. But notice, 8 is not double of 6, is it? But 160 is double of 80, so we're growing even more quickly because it's compounding quicker and quicker and quicker and quicker and more and more and more. So that's a big deal. And then we get over here to around 12%, which isn't unrealistic, and we can talk about strategies to get 12% with a pretty high certainty. Now it's doubling every 6%. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Now we're looking at 640,000 based upon the same initial amount put in at the same point in our life. You can't minimize the impact of the difference of someone's retirement of having $640,000 in it versus $20,000. And of course, this $20,000 is quite a few years later than age 65. This is a big, big, big deal. So how do we apply it? Well, number one, most banks have this in reverse, right? Normally they will pay us a very low rate for savings and will pay a higher rate for borrowed money, especially if we have bad credit. So what we need to do is switch that around, right? And maybe even look for strategies to kind of be our own bank, and we can help you with that with the Smart Money Plan concept. So it's huge, watching your money grow and stop paying high interest rates to banks. Key concept, key concept. Now, the next is we want to talk about protecting our principal, because when we talk about saving money, people will say, well, yeah, the bank is simple. I can go put money in the savings account and it's safe, right? Because it's FDIC insured. If that bank were to go upside down, the government guarantees it. I could never lose my money. I kind of like that because a lot of people get a little edgy or a little worried about investing money in a volatile way like stocks. Well, there are some ways around that, but let's first talk about how we want to avoid volatility. So we got Mr. A and Mr. B. Mr. A is a risk taker, Mr. B is conservative. So they start out with $100 to invest, both of them year one. Mr. A's investment goes up 40%, goes down 20% in year two, so they've netted 20%. Or netted 20%. Mr. B's investment went up 10% in year one, 10% in year two, so it netted 20%. So do you think that they'll have the same amount of money after those 2 years? Well, no. Mr. A went up $40, and then he went down 20% of that new amount, so he's at $112 versus adding 10% and adding 10% at $121. So Mr. B is ahead by about 10% of his principal after 2 years, based upon steady growth versus having any losses. Scenario 2, again, Mr. A is aggressive, his money goes up 50%. He must have got in some good IPO or something, because that's a fairly unrealistic number to expect. Let's follow along. Went up 50% in year one, down 50% in year two. He net 0%, so he's back to the starting point, right? Where Mr. B just said, I can't stand it. I'm going to put money in a coffee can and bury it in the backyard, so I just earned 0% for 2 years. Well, at 0%, they'd both have the same amount of money after 2 years, right? No. Mr. A went up 50%, but of that 150, he lost 50% in year two, so he's at $75. He's lost 25% of his initial amount after 2 years. He's going to have some really good years coming up just to get back to where he started. He is lower than where he started, where, of course, Mr. B is at the exact same point, because 0 and 0 equals 0% change. So what do we need to take away from this? It's not just the potential of high returns. We need to seek higher returns, but never exposing our principals to loss. Because if it's a loss, we don't know if it's going to be a little loss and a big loss. And if it's a loss at all, we may have to work years and years, like Mr. A here will, to just get back to where he was. He would have been better off in this example to bury his money in a coffee can like Mr. B did. So that's another key concept. The way that we get around it, and this is, again, a kind of an advanced strategy, but we'll walk you through it, is we use derivatives. It's awesome. So it's kind of like indexing. So we can use indexed funds, so as the stock market goes up, our money goes up. But our money is never actually in the market. So if the market goes down, our principal can never go down. Our gains are locked in. We are not exposed to losses at all. The stock market could collapse like it did multiple times in history, right? 1929 and most recently in the late 2000s, we could never lose money. So there are some key strategies that the average person isn't familiar with that starts to build all these components together, that if you are in the position where you're able to start saving money and building reserves, that can make a tremendous difference. Another concept that you need to understand, we believe, is taxes. Now, of course, in general, most of us don't care to pay taxes, and we probably have the right to look for legal ways to minimize the amount of taxes that we pay. So not lying, cheating, or stealing, but there are options, right? And if you own your own home, the mortgage interest is tax deductible. So you could say, no, I want to pay more taxes and not take that deduction, but that would be kind of wasting your money because that's the way the system works. Well, there are different ways to save money, and how it's taxed depends upon the structure of that. So let's look at a different example. Here we're looking at the same amount of money going in, getting the same type of return over the same period of years. But now we're just looking at how the taxes impact how much money they have. So if the growth and distribution is taxable, the baseline here is $25,000. If we can defer taxes until we take it out, we don't have to pay it on growth, Now we're pulling out $36,000 a year for retirement. But there are some vehicles that we can use where the money grows and distributes tax-free. So for the same amount going in under all the same assumptions at the top, now we're pulling out $48,000 a year. So same amount of money going in, same growth, all the same assumptions, just being able to legally avoid taxes on growth and distribution can change, using this example, almost doubles the amount of money that you have in your pocket at the end of the day. That's a big, big deal, right? It's legal, it's ethical, it's all about knowledge and having people help you accomplish this. And we can do that. We also want to maintain liquidity. 401ks have received a lot of press, some good, some bad, and that's not what we're involved with, so we don't have a firm opinion on it. But the bottom line is, if you put money in a 401k and you want to take it out to go buy a new refrigerator, they're probably not going to let you have that money, or it's going to be quite the hassle. You may have to break your plan to get it and pay a penalty. So some would argue, well, whose money is it anyway? So what we want to do is look for strategies where you have liquidity. And when we set up a smart money plan, you can actually borrow against your own money instead of going to the bank. It's a concept of like being your own bank. And so by doing that, you pay yourself interest versus the bank. So a much superior strategy. And so, some people say, well, I'll save up, I'll just pay cash for everything. Well, that's actually foolish in most cases. Now, those people wouldn't agree maybe, but here's why. Let's say you're going to go get a $30,000 car, and you've got $30,000 in the bank for savings, and you say, well, I'll just go use that $30,000 because I don't want to finance it, right? I don't want to have to pay an interest rate to a finance company. That's wasted money. Well, option one is you could borrow money from a bank, and then that's going to drive up your cost, like we said. Option two is you can pay cash for a car, but that is only a good thing to do if you have no use for the money. But if, in fact, you can use a plan like we're talking about, watch the money grow, and maybe you're averaging 10, 12, 14% growth, you're paying yourself 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% interest, you're actually using your own money and hedging, making money off of the difference. So using your money wisely is crucial, and paying cash for large purchases is usually unwise. And again, that's a contrarian statement, I know. Now, a lot of us, 76% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, and so the opinion is, well, this is all fine, but I don't have any cash to save to do these strategies with. Well, we can help you. We can look at helping improve your credit that might lower your interest rates, maybe the money that you're saving now, whether it be directly or through 401ks not performing the way that it should. Maybe we just need to eat out a little less or make some lifestyle changes, or even work with us. I mean, we're looking for educators all the time that help us go out and set up workshops teaching the same message. No cost to be an educator. We'll teach you, we'll train you, and you're making on average $2,000 to $3,000 a workshop that you go out and teach. It's a big deal. So I guess my point is, I don't want you to feel like there's an excuse of why you can't leverage these strategies, whether it be on the credit side or money side. We can help you if you're willing. So let's wrap it up. Our first step was to learn together, and we're kind of wrapping that up now. The next is to enroll in the free Financial Wellness 101 program. If you're in person at a workshop, we'll be able to help you go through that process by completing a Financial Wellness 101 evaluation that helps us calculate your financial wellness score, as we talked earlier, and then determine if you qualify. If you're listening to this as a recording, then of course we can facilitate that thereafter. What happens once you're enrolled and accepted into the program, and then we implement your smart money plan working on credit as well as these other areas. And again, if you're looking to help others and or generate extra income, maybe consider becoming an educator with us. Got a quick quiz for you that I want to go through and see what your thoughts are on it. So question number 1, why is it bad to have bad credit? Give you a second to think about that. I think there's a couple answers, right? Number 1, it's unnecessary because, remember, credit doesn't have a memory. So we can fix today what happened yesterday, and you don't have to have bad credit anymore. Secondly, it's more expensive. It limits your options in terms of employment and housing and transportation. What are the 3 magic words when it comes to credit repair? Anybody remember those? Accurate, complete, and verifiable. That's kind of a summary of what those federal laws allow us to do. Thirdly, how effective is debt validation in removing derogatory items? Remember, we said that when we contest and look for those 8 key areas from the creditor, that 95% of the time they're not able to validate the debt. So the answer to that is it's effective almost every time. Now, how in the world can credit-challenged individuals build new credit? If they get bad credit, how are they going to find anyone that's going to give them a second chance? And it's not going and opening secured credit cards, I'll tell you that. Well, that's one of the reasons that we might want to work together, is we have access to some guaranteed issue unsecured credit cards that can report to all 3 bureaus and really build your credit profile quickly. Next, why is it important to save money? Seems kind of like a no-brainer, but we know that most people don't do it, and maybe part of it's because of cash flow. Some of it may be because of financial responsibility or cash management, but ultimately, we probably want to save money for life's expected and unexpected events. What are 5 key principles of an effective money plan? Anybody remember those? Let's go back and take a look at those, because that was pretty important, that as you're thinking about how you want to save money, are you incorporating these 5 elements? Is the way that you're saving money, is it outpacing inflation? Are you protected against market losses? Your principal can't go down. Are you avoiding taxation on growth and distribution? Is your money liquid? And lastly, we didn't talk much about, but how you save money can either make it vulnerable or protected against creditors, lawsuits, and bankruptcy. So those are the 5 key strategies that you really want to think about incorporating into how you save money. Now, of course, the first step of saving money is the decision, the willingness, the commitment to do so. The second is, how do I go about doing it? And that's what we're trying to help you with this message and follow-up discussions. So that was that one. When we talked about making major purchases, is it better to pay cash, finance, or borrow it? Well, your best option is to use your smart money plan, because your money actually doesn't come out of the plan, therefore it continues to grow. It's a leveraged loan whereby the principal stays in the indexing, growing. You're just borrowing against it. And then lastly, what's our next step after this session? Well, that's to complete the Financial Wellness 101 evaluation to see if you qualify. And it's going to look something like this. We would go through, it's a validated instrument. There are 10 questions, each with a yes or no, I like to say yay or nay answer, and then we're able to calculate your score. And from this, we'll ask a few follow-up kind of probing questions, and we can put together a smart money plan for you, a plan of what we need to do to help you have less no's and more yeses and improve your financial wellness. Well, I really appreciate your time. We spent nearly 45 minutes together. I hope that you feel like it was worthwhile. Some great concepts there. We are anxious to work with you and help you and your family. If you'd like to help us take the word out as an educator, consider that as well. Certainly you can visit our website, you can give us a call, or you can email us. So thank you, everyone. Look forward to working with you, and have a great day. Bye-bye.